All right, hi, so welcome to the next of the episodes in Startup Business TV, and thanks so much for tuning in. So I'm Richard Moore, and this is going to be a really fun one today. It's a really interesting company. They're a very large one. You all know who they are, and the last few sessions have been interesting because we looked at different facets of companies, but always in mind is this idea of what can we learn if we're starting a business of our own or an entrepreneur, for instance. So if this is your first time to Startup Business TV, the episode structure is really simple. 20 minutes or so, maybe a bit longer. We're going to look at how a company is built and grown, but we're going to also leave the episode having looked at 3 key lessons that we can take away to use on our own businesses. So it doesn't matter if you're well established, you can still put these into play. And like I said in the last episode on BlackBerry, there's plenty of things to learn from in terms of mistakes to avoid, as well as things to learn from in terms of successes too. So today's business, you all know very well, as I say, some will have, like with all of these, it's very divisive. Some people don't like businesses, some people do. It's because they're so large that you probably have so many people interacting with them and therefore have different views. So here we go, Microsoft. Okay, which actually is the formation of the words microcomputer and software, if anyone needed to know. So been around for a very long time, over 40 years actually. It was 1975 when they were founded, and you probably know the names, of course, Paul Allen and Bill Gates. Okay, they're, childhood friends, okay? They had a love of computer programming. I can identify them with them at secondary school. I did a lot of tapping away on a computer and programming, and this is what these guys did as well. Probably far more proficient than I ever was, or ever hoped to be, in fact. But they hacked into their school computer, and having a computer in the 70s, of course, very rare thing. But basically, instead of being expelled from the school, they were given free, unlimited use of their computer, the computer at school. In fact, requested that they might try and improve it. Bill Gates went on to Harvard. My pen's going to run out, is it? Harvard, and Paul Allen was Washington State. Okay. In fact, Paul Allen dropped out of university. So if those of you who are big on dropouts, not necessarily not being able to achieve anything, you got a great example here in Paul Allen. The guy still owns something close to 100 million shares, I believe, of Microsoft. Speaking of which, there's a little bit of a myth around Bill Gates' wealth, just as an aside. Recently he's been quoted as being worth 90 billion. It's a huge jump up now, so now he's head and shoulders above even number 2 place. But the belief is that this is all tied up in Microsoft, whereas in fact it's actually slightly less, I believe, than 3% of his wealth is in Microsoft at the moment. So in fact he has a very diverse portfolio, I suppose. So anyway, the interesting thing, and there's a lesson in this for us all, is that for starters, there's a real passion in these two in computer programming. So they really believed in it, and it's something they could draw on because it was something they deeply had an affinity with. And in 1975, I believe it was Paul Allen picked up a magazine about popular programming. Back then there's no computers in the households really at all. It's a bit of a kind of a fringe thing that people do, in building things in their garages and things like that. So computers were very different. But still, 1975, there was a magazine within which there was an article about a company called MITS. And prior to this, they built, computers to do, I believe, things like traffic data counting and things like that, for road traffic. But MITS had developed a computer, you could call it, called the Altair 8800. Okay, and in short, Bill Gates called up MITS or wrote to them and said, we can produce what's known as an interpreter. In 2016 speak, just imagine computer will build software for it, I suppose, is one way of looking at it. Interpreter for it. And of course, these guys said, great, come down and demonstrate it to us. A basic interpreter, as it would have been known. Bill Gates said nothing of the sort. Okay, so he was being quite ballsy by saying, yeah, we've got an interpreter we could build, and you could put that, you could ship it with your with your product. And in fact, they had nothing. So this is really interesting. This is where I often talk about this for startup businesses. If you are stuck in a really tough moment, you need to be able to draw on your passion and your deep interest in something. So if you pick your business wrong, don't overdo it, but if you pick something wrong, when you think about building a business, it's got to be something you're keen on, at least. Rather than, oh, there's hype, that person over there makes a lot of money, I'll go and do that for my business. It needs to be something that feels a bit more, part of your DNA, I strongly believe, at least. So Bill Gates said, right, I think he shut himself in a hotel room for a couple of days or something and just built this thing. Just built it and then, walked out and went, there you go, Paul Allen, I've done it. I need to go back to Harvard to finish my exams or something like that. So Paul Allen, anyway, he went there, he demonstrated a simulation of the interpreter and it worked full time. He fed in the code, because this is all done by paper, and then there's pressing buttons and things, and it all works. So they became the distributor for this basic code they set up. But what's really interesting, what really kind of made them in my mind, was in the 1980s. Okay, they created a thing called DOS, or in fact they kind of purchased it from someone else to start with. But disk operating system, in short, those of you who are a little bit younger than me, you're used to Windows probably, and these what's known as graphical interfaces, where you have actual pictures and images and a window that you can type within, rather than just being text on the screen, a bit like the Matrix, you might think. And this is what the DOS system was. It was basically a text-based operating system. Okay, so instead of Windows or whatever, you have DOS, and it would load up, on a disk or something like that. And the idea was that, again, just like with the Altair and MITS, they said to IBM, we'll produce your disk operating system for you. And they had actually nothing of the sort. I think that was in fact in 1980, in fact. But then, they built it. And I think there's a thing called QDOS, if I remember rightly. QDOS is Quick and Dirty Operating System, which is very clever, because they were just throwing it together. But eventually this got shipped. 1984 was a big year, because I believe that was when it was started to get shipped with IBM computers. So IBM was the computer brand at the time. You have HP now, or Asus, or whatever it is. But back then it was all IBM, and their vision, okay, was we think there will be a PC in every home, on every desktop, okay? And so the view of them was, we need to move fast, much like we saw with Amazon a few episodes back, the idea of land grabbing early, and they wanted to make sure, of course, that they were involved in every PC. So back in the 80s, we then moved from the disk operating system, which was text-based, of course, to Windows, which I think was 1982 or something like that. But basically, you had your first iteration of it. And the processing power back then, you have more of it in your own watch probably at the moment. But it was really interesting. I was very young back then, and I would say in these early years, and I was only 2 back then, but in the mid-80s, I remember we got our first little computer, and it was all text things, and we didn't even have Windows back then. But it was an interesting time, because it was starting to become something quite popular. And I remember I was like 6 years old, and my father was teaching me basic programming. So I was learning some basic, it's literally called BASIC, was the programming language, and learning how to program things. And it became a really exciting new thing. So you've got to understand, it was a very different world back then. This is where here in the UK, we had a television which had 4 channels, and it was all very different. So this was exciting for many people, and I think we were starting to move to this point where people were getting computers in their homes that served various functions. Obviously, we were many years from being online as well. 1986, just as a whistle-stop tour of history here, 1986 was their IPO, famous for 12,000 millionaires being made overnight, and of course 3 billionaires overnight as well, including these 2 chaps. So there was a rapid surge, but it's really crucial to bear in mind, for those of you who want your quick succession to fame and fortune, things take time. This was a very small software company, 2 enthusiasts at the cutting edge, sure, but in a bit of a world where much like with Nike as well. If you remember from the Nike episode, back in the 70s, running wasn't a thing people really did. Okay, it was seen as a little bit of a weird thing to do, and this was a bit of a, you know, you'd be a bit of an oddball if you're into computing and programming and things like that. So they're seen as geeks and things back then too, but very different world, I suppose. But Windows was really the flagship product and still is, and I think that, you know, moving into the 90s, things became very exciting because we went through different iterations of Windows, and I think it was 1990 that we got our first PC at home, and most of my friends did as well. And it's a very interesting time because then you have these, every couple of years you had different types of Windows and things, and it did feel like a prevailing culture of this is the type of this is what a computer is going to look like, this is the kind of software we had, and there was no question of would we use something else. Maybe that was just me in my kind of space, but it was just Windows, and that was that really. And then what's interesting is that they're always looking to innovate. Okay, so let's not look at them through the same lens as BlackBerry, even though arguably nowadays, this is 2016 right now, you could argue other companies are light years ahead of them in terms of particular markets. They still were very innovative. So you have 1995, where you had Windows 95. Okay, so that famously had the new start button, and I remember it well because the Times newspaper, the day of its launch, they'd bought out an advert at the bottom of every single page which had a start bar with the start button on it. And I remember thinking, there's this start button thing everywhere, and it certainly got everyone quite excited about it. But, you know, a lot of different iterations. Some things worked, some things didn't. Windows XP was very popular. Windows 98 was basically a reiteration of this anyway, 95. And you have Windows Vista, which didn't really work, people didn't like it, and then we jumped up, we've got Windows 10 now, and of course it's all very much based online. What's interesting though as well is that they recognised that, you know, you've got, yes, this is an important market, and still they're very dominant, of course, and the revenues, I mean, we're looking at an $85 billion business right now, okay? However, they saw the importance of innovation being necessary into other markets. So if you're unaware, of course, there are brands and products such as Xbox, that's Microsoft. There's Surface, which I think it was in 2013, and that's their first ever own made hardware. So this is made by Microsoft, the actual hardware itself. Surface is like the idea of having a monitor or a screen where you can touch and interact with it, but with your fingers. And you know, there's more beyond this. So of course there's the mobile side, which is very interesting of late, and they acquired Nokia, or at least the mobile division, and very recently moving more with business, because I think Nokia was several billion acquisition, but LinkedIn, I think 2 months ago actually, so back in June, Microsoft moved to acquire LinkedIn for something like, I think it's 26 billion. Okay, so they're always aware that they need to acquire and move up in the sense of keeping pace with the world as well, and of course innovation being crucial. But so that's like the briefest of surface scratches of Microsoft. But I think I was really wanting to talk about them because more than anything about the actual lessons that we can learn from it, and there are many of them. But there's three things in particular when I just did my research and my just general knowledge about them anyway, that always have stood out really, I suppose. And I really think what resonates with me, because I've worked with so many startup businesses now, and also businesses that are established over the past 15 years, I've been really fortunate to interact with a lot of CEOs, managing directors of multi-million pound companies, all the way down to ones literally starting today. You do find that those that prevail, as in the people themselves, tend to have a real sense of this. So lesson number one is a real sense of a mission. Okay. And this mission, I've mentioned this recently to some people anyway, but the idea of this mission is it should supersede profit and money, okay, and things like that. It should go beyond the pursuit of wealth. That was never there intention, to focus on generating themselves money. Sure, you have to have money to live, and they wanted to build this business and things like that, but it was more about a vision and a mission. We want to get a PC in every home that has our software on it. And that started right at the start. That was, they could see that coming. I think, and famously it was in the 1990s, it may have been 95 actually, that Bill Gates wrote a memo to all his staff talking about the tidal wave. It was famously quoted, the tidal wave of the internet coming. And much like Jeff Bezos as well, seeing the internet as an opportunity, you know, they jumped on that and said, you know, we have a mission here to embrace this and work with it. And for all of you out there who are concerned that there's no major technological innovation that you can jump on right now, and the term is land grab and get market share before anyone else does, that's not the right way of looking at it. Of course there are ways you can get an advantage. What it may well be is that it's a twist or something unique on something that already exists. Okay, so looking at it that way is a different approach. Okay, so having a mission means that you can really draw on that kind of information or feeling of what you want to do when you need to. So I mentioned earlier, you know, the idea that Bill Gates just closed himself off just to write this code because they had to do it. There were a lot of really tight moments when they had to just pull out all the stops and not sleep. And there are, I think Paul Allen's book, but if you haven't read it, the autobiography called The Ideas Man, or Ideas Man, is a fantastic autobiography. And I found it was really interesting. There was a moment where there's the two of them, and I think someone else as well, they were just sitting around, like in a room, just writing out lines of code. Because of course back then you didn't have PCs with masses of memory. What you had was these little computers which had, you know, tiny amounts of memory, and so you could only have so many lines of code. There was only so much memory to play with, so they'd have to write a line of code and then, you know, see how they could pare it back and make it more efficient so it didn't use up all the memory of the computer. And these are really exciting moments for people like this, because it's doing something they're really deeply passionate about. The point I'm trying to make here is that you're not going to do that unless you're deeply interested in this kind of area. So this is not to put people off who are thinking, well, I'm starting a business, I've already begun, oh, now I feel like I'm not pursuing a passion. Well, you should be pursuing a passion, and if it isn't a direct passion, well, then you need to do things within that role that keep it a passion, and therefore you'll be able to draw on those reserves when the chips are down, you really need to. Okay, so having a mission's crucial, and it's been more of this as they move forward. Obviously the missions change and things like that, and you know, famously Bill Gates, I believe, is giving away something like 97% of all of his wealth will be going to, there's the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, but going away to charities and of course medical research and things like that. And he's only retaining a few percentage of points of it. And obviously that's still a lot of money anyway, I get that, but there's still a bigger thing than making money. It seemed to be always the way, okay? And you know, it's a message really for all of you out there who are grafting every day and working 19-20-hour days and doing it all in the pursuit of wealth, okay, and acquisition of money as your goal or your mission. Take a moment and stop to look at the people who have made it to be super successful. Okay, those people. So we've looked at the likes of, you know, in the future we'll look at the likes of Elon Musk and Richard Branson as well. If you want to look at these top people who've become billionaires, none of them really seem to ever pursue directly money. You could argue even Warren Buffett as an investor wasn't pursuing personal wealth. Absolutely not. The guy is interested in investing, and the fact that he's making money is just simply the byproduct, is the signifier of success for him. But it's not about making himself, I want to be a millionaire, that's why I'm going to do this business. So you need to think hard on that. Unless you have a deeper mission or purpose, it's not just that I think this, it's been proven, it's been shown, you know, not least you're going to be more stimulated. You talk about, you know, the say 10 or 15 years or so, maybe less, but say the 10 to 16 years it would have been, no, sorry, I'm terrible math. So it would have been 11 years, in fact, so until the IPO, and up until that point, these are hard years for these people, okay? And they are very much more focused on the mission, because it means that whilst the years are hard and they may not have made much money, the reality is they're stimulated all the while, okay? So I'm not a billionaire, but I've done things with the businesses I've created to make sure that the terms with which I live my life and the things I do are stimulating for me, because then you're living a mission that at the side makes you loads of money. If you really care that much, then good for you. But the main part is that you enjoy it as you go, because it's something that's stimulating you. So that's what you should be doing, I believe, more than anything else, okay? I do believe this second lesson's an important one as well. And I feel there's this, it's worth being aware of it. So the concept of jumping, just jump. When there's an opportunity, I had this a while back, I won't give any details because it potentially is going to turn into something in the future, but someone presented something to me and I thought to myself, that sounds really great. And I literally just said, I'm your man, no problem, that's exactly, I'm there, it's me, I'll do that, no problem at all. And sometimes when you get some opportunities, some things you just need to weigh them up, but sometimes if you feel like it's something that fits and is aligned with your mission, you just got to jump. Like with IBM and building the DOS operating system, saying, yeah, we've got that, we've produced that for you, and they hadn't had it made. Same with MITS, with the Altair as well. Yeah, we've got your interpreter, they haven't got one at all, okay? So sometimes you've got to use the phrase Bill Gates famously said, which is build it, ship it, fix it. So get the thing out there, or say you can do it and then build the thing afterwards. Or there's the famous saying, of course, jump off the cliff and then build the plane on the way down. So just get in there. It doesn't mean jump at everything, but being scared to never take these small risks. If it's clearly an opportunity for you, sometimes you've got to go out. And there's a comfort zone thing, okay? And it can mean, of course, that you get scared or there's fear, but that can also be reinterpreted in your mind or translated as excitement as well. Because this is what it's all about. And look at it this way, there are plenty of safety nets. You are unlikely to end up without a roof over your head if you try something that doesn't work, because otherwise you wouldn't be in that space anyway. So do jump if you get these opportunities. They did. And it's easy to jump when you've got loads of money or capital behind you to try new ventures and things like that. They certainly didn't really have that. They basically jumped at something because they saw an opportunity to help with their mission. So if it's aligned with your mission, you should really be taking it, okay? And I think one other lesson, if we look at it more on the business side, and this does happen more the larger the company gets, but I think that sometimes you need to recognize that if you want a leg up, you need to get some help. And in fact, I was only speaking to someone earlier today about investing and getting investors for his business, and he was saying, we know we can move forward at a certain pace, but if we were to get an investor for this part of our business, we would really accelerate. And sometimes you just got to get drafting help to kind of be able to make a bit of a step change. So bring in expertise is a really important feature in Microsoft, and it's bringing people in from other companies, sure, but it also means buying businesses. So there's been lots of acquisitions for Microsoft. I'm not going to go into them in detail, but if you look at LinkedIn, the latest move by Microsoft, and if you also look at Nokia, especially Nokia, in fact, I think it's something like, I think it's 7% of the US smartphone market is the only market share that Microsoft has. And they bought Nokia, and you could say, well, this is a bit of a weak brand. Well, it wasn't. Back in the end of the 90s and the 2000s, Nokia was a really strong brand, in fact. But it's superseded by Apple, and in the smartphone market, yeah, Android and Apple are way ahead, but going off a Windows only phone arguably wouldn't have given them the leg up they might have got. So it's a good idea to look all the time at where could I draft in expertise. And the question you might ask yourself is, well, how is that relevant to me as a startup business? I can't go acquire businesses. Well, that's true, but what you can do is outsource early on certain things. you know, if you are, let's say, for want of a better word, if you're weak at sales, get someone in to help you with sales, someone who believes in your mission, someone who's going to go for it with you as well, but jump at the chance to get someone in, you know. And I've seen this in the past. A great example for me was that building one of my websites was something that could have been quite straightforward, but I had other things I really needed to be focused on rather than teaching myself first how to build a website and then going ahead and doing it. So I brought in expertise in the form of a web developer, and it's not perfect, but it shares my vision. And at the end of the day, it means that for now, I've got something that's not just functioning, but actually quite effective. And I've been able to focus on other things. Otherwise, I would have been killing myself to build part of my business without having something else that bolts on. This is fantastic for Microsoft using having LinkedIn, and let's see what happens with that. But you know, the point still here is that by purchasing Nokia, it was potentially something that could have been a game changer. Arguably, it hasn't been, and we'll be interested to see where that turns out to end up going. But the suggestion has been there is some great technology in Nokia, and you know, the business just died, and so we might as well buy it up. And there's plenty in there that Microsoft could make use of rather. So I think that going on your own, not seeking help, not looking to work with other people, not looking to outsource things as well, perhaps elements that you're a little bit weaker on, it's a little bit of a mistake, because bringing in expertise means that kind of, if the analogy I was once given was, it's like having a tripod, okay, which is three-legged, like a telescope stand or something. If one of your legs is weak, you're going to fall over. So you need to strengthen the legs of your business or yourself that don't quite stand up or take the strain of what's needed, and that's a strong way to grow. But knowing when to do it and when to not do it is important, because and this is hard, but I've encountered a business recently that's doing a lot of marketing with pretty much anyone they can find, and you know, you could be involved with advertising platforms that just don't help at all, or people who suggest they can help you with marketing, but then they just don't know what they're doing. So it's very difficult, but that's a different story. That's a conversation about recruiting talent, or working with partners, or buying in, doing an acquisition, which, you know, you've done the due diligence for and is going to help your company. But nevertheless, the point remains that you can't do it all on your own, and bring in expertise by acquisitions to help get yourself a leg up, especially in this fierce competition. You know, one of the main drivers behind buying Nokia is that it was going to be helping them in going head to head with Apple and Android systems as well, and that was crucial for them. So it's interesting to see, it'll be interesting to see where we go, but they've brought in expertise in different areas of the wider Microsoft company, because they do so many different things. And let's see where the end result, you know, what the end result is. But I suppose what I'm saying here is they may do software really well, but buying other companies who can help them, for instance, even back in the 80s when they were getting involved with IBM, they bought in someone's software. Paul Allen did a deal with someone to buy this disk operating system, so they could then get this on board with IBM rather than sitting down and programming it all themselves. So even back then, they were bringing in expertise as well. Okay, I wanted to keep things quite simple today, so it's quite a shorter episode. But these things, I mean, this is quite crucial, as is this. But I really think this one, I'm really hot on this, and rather than it just being an opinion I have, it's something I've evidenced myself. But moreover, in the 15 years or so I've been involved in working with businesses and helping them grow in whatever way it may have been, having a mission, as in, I want to ultimately achieve this, such as I want to ultimately be part of a world where our software is in every computer and there's a PC on every desk, and we're going to help facilitate that. You know, I want to do something huge. Steve Jobs from Apple famously saying, we want to ding the universe. They want to have a kind of legacy and something left on it. And it's a bit touchy-feely, but it's as simple as saying to yourself, when I'm 90 and I look back on 10 or 15 or maybe even 20 years of building a business, am I going to be really, really pleased with myself because I just focused on leveraging algorithms to generate cash? Okay, if it's because you love the idea of working through problems to understand Facebook adverts so that you can get the minutiae right, and so the nuances mean that you have a more successful campaign, and that's the stimulating part, that kind of engineering work on it, then good for you. But if it's purely because you only want to generate money, and the vehicle or device, so the business that you're using to get that money, it's just the thing you're using, well then it's quite a hollow way of living, because you're going to spend a lot of time building this business. So just think about that. Make sure there's some real depth to your mission, rather than I want to be a millionaire. There should be something a bit more to it. I know that's seductive, but base it around a mission at least, and then you'll be able to draw on that when the time is hard and you need it. Okay, so I hope that was of use. If you're interested in more of this kind of thing, there of course have been previous episodes. We've covered the likes of Amazon, we've covered the likes of BlackBerry. The next episode is going to be really interesting, so make sure you tune in for that. If you like this, give me a thumbs up. If you don't, and then unsubscribe, give me a thumbs down, tell me why, so pop in a comment as well, and please share it as well. So the only reason why this is being perpetuated is because you guys have all been so wonderful and given me loads of messages and kind words saying how much you enjoy it. So I'll happily keep going as long as people want to keep watching it. So that's really kind of you all. All the best, learn a lot from this. I've literally covered next to nothing about Microsoft because there's so much in there, but I do think Paul Allen's autobiography is a really good read if you want to get an understanding of it. And for those of you who are kind of my age at the moment, so mid-30s or older, this will resonate with you. These kind of early years, really exciting times, but I think there's so much to be learned from the early Microsoft, the way they jumped, the way they knew that they wanted there's a huge mission, a huge thing they had in mind, and that's something you can take with you into your business as well. Okay, I'll see you on the next episode. Take care, and thanks so much for watching.